Ancient Rome is remembered for its architectural feats and conquests. But have you ever heard of exotic animals in ancient Rome? By the time the Roman Empire stretched from England to North Africa and the Middle East, they used to exchange these exotic animals. So, what were those exotic animals? And how were they used? And is it true that the Romans used these animals to punish criminals? Let's find the truth. Animals sourced from the farthest reaches of the empire were often presented before the public as living proof of Rome's expansive control. Such creatures were not locally found and were sent as tokens by provincial governors, kings, and noblemen from territories yet unconquered by Rome. These living gifts were not just symbols of submission or respect, but also played a role in showcasing the power and reach of the Roman Empire to its citizens. It was during the 1st century BC that Romans were introduced to the majestic beasts that graced their empire. Initially, the list of exotic animals was limited to elephants, ostriches, tigers, and lions. But in the next millennium, the variety of exotic animals in Rome expanded vastly. Hippos, rhinos, camels, and giraffes were brought in from Africa. Now, you may wonder what the purpose of keeping such unusual creatures in ancient Rome could be. Exotic animals were often showcased in grand parades that marched through the city streets. Spectators marveled at these foreign beasts, adorned in ornate harnesses and plumes, added a sense of otherworldly mystique to public celebrations. Additionally, some animals were trained to perform tricks, serving as entertainment and displaying Roman control. Perhaps most infamously, many of these exotic animals were made to fight either against gladiators or each other in the Colosseum to satiate the public's appetite for spectacle and violence. Such a display of power and dominance over nature was a way to assert Rome's superiority over conquered lands. Now, here's where things start to get crazy. Inside the Colosseum, there were two main types of animal fights. The first was called Damnatio ad Bestias, an event where animals attacked criminals as a death penalty. How scary it must have been to be thrown into an arena filled with wild beasts. The second type was known as Venationes. These were savage battles, where animals fought other creatures or went up against gladiators armed with weapons. Even for the Romans, these shows were shockingly violent. For example, Emperor Augustus was responsible for killing 3,500 animals during his time in power. But the emperors who came after him went even further. Titus and Trajan caused the deaths of a staggering 5,000 and 11,000 animals, each surpassing the other in their deadly extravaganzas. It's hard to believe how humans could be so cruel to these exotic animals. But then, we should not forget that we are talking about a civilization that celebrated violence and conquest. All of you might be familiar with the concept of supply and demand. In the context of ancient Rome, the Colosseum's never-ending appetite for exotic animals gave rise to a niche profession: specialized hunters. Stationed at the empire's edges, these hunters mastered the art of tracking and snaring beasts such as bears and tigers with remarkable skill. They ensured that the animals were captured intact. Many Roman writers, including Petronius, have written about the techniques used by these skilled hunters. Their expertise allowed them to track and safely capture these dangerous animals while not hurting them during the capture process. This was as if they were not bears or tigers, but gentle kittens instead. Their strategy was simple. These Roman hunters lured their prey into strategically placed pits. Once the animals fell into these traps, they were left there for days, even weeks, until they became weak and were easier to handle without much resistance. Additionally, the hunters used large, heavy nets to capture these powerful animals. Once caught, the creatures were bound onto wooden boards, ensuring a safe transport to Rome, where they would become reluctant stars in the empire's deadly games. But here's the good news. Not every exotic animal met a deadly fate upon their arrival in ancient Rome. Particularly when they first graced the city, many were spared from the brutality of the Colosseum. Some of these majestic creatures were objects of wonder and were often kept in menageries where the Roman elite could see them. These animals were tokens of Rome's triumph over nature and geography, living symbols of the empire's vastness. It wasn't unusual for some Romans, with sufficient resources, to display these exotic animals as a status symbol, highlighting their wealth and connection to the power of the Roman state. One example of Rome's fascination with exotic animals can be seen with Caesar's giraffe. This animal, according to historical accounts by Dio, was displayed for the entire populace to admire. Augustus, too, seemed to have imitated this practice. Whenever a rare creature arrived in the city, he would arrange a dedicated viewing. Historian Suetonius notes that Augustus would find a suitable venue and set up these viewings on days without scheduled events, ensuring that all could witness these remarkable sights. The popularity of any given venatio was largely based on the audience's curiosity and fascination. In fact, the first recorded venation took place in 252 BC, during the throes of the First Punic War, making a spectacle of war-captured elephants from Sicily, a sight previously unseen by Roman eyes. As the Roman Republic neared its end, affluent sponsors vied to outdo one another, leveraging their connections to secure the rarest beasts available, be it fierce leopards or menacing crocodiles, to surprise their fellow citizens. Here's what Caroline Weiser, who studied ancient history at the University of Columbia, discussed in her article for The Atlantic. While local animals like bulls and dogs were common in Venationes, the Romans were much more interested in exotic species. These foreign creatures were new and thrilling. They also weren't interested in breeding these animals in Rome. The captured were seen more as dangerous and more valuable. People found them incredibly interesting because they were so untamed and rare. The relationship between Romans and exotic animals was complex, reflecting the nuances of human psychology and societal values. Some leaders, like the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, had limited interest in cruel entertainment such as Venationes and chose not to indulge in them. On the other hand, Commodus, who came after Aurelius, loved playing the role of a gladiator and even designed a special arrow for killing ostriches. Then, there were emperors like Caesar and Augustus who showed alternating behaviors. They sometimes marveled at the exotic creatures, treating them with curiosity and respect. However, there were occasions when they eagerly orchestrated savage games in the Colosseum, leading to the animals' indiscriminate killing. These contrasting attitudes highlight a moral dichotomy within Roman leadership and society. Regardless of everything, the Venationes seem to have played an important role in humanizing exotic animals in Roman times, turning them from figures of myth and lore into being similar to humans. Caroline Weiser, in her Atlantic article, mentions a particularly compelling mosaic that captures this transition poignantly. In the artwork, 4 leopards face off against 4 gladiators, yet they bear nicknames just as their human opponents do. Beyond their individual identities, these leopards are portrayed wearing laurel crowns. This artistic representation sheds light on the gradual perception shift among Romans, where these animals were not merely seen as fierce beasts, but also admired for their strength and magnificence. This was everything about the role of exotic animals in ancient Rome. As we can see, the relationship between Romans and these creatures was complex, reflecting both their admiration and exploitation. However, it cannot be denied that these animals played a significant role in Roman society, from being utilized for deadly games to becoming symbols of wealth and power. If you enjoyed the video, give it a big thumbs up and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Also, let us know in the comments if you want to see more videos on similar topics. You can also check out our previous video on Eleanor of Aquitaine. Goodbye until next time!